Hello and welcome to EduCurious. I'm so glad you joined us today. I have a guest speaker, Pam Danis, with me. She is a retired art teacher and she's got tons of information about what it's like teaching in a private school sector. So welcome, Pam. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
I want to hear about your story. Tell me a little bit about your career path and what got you to this side of the education world.
I just a little bit on my background. I went to Boston University School of Fine Arts and graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I also took some master's classes in student psychology, things of that nature that would help with teaching. Although I never really wanted to be a teacher, to be quite honest with you. I started, just so you know, a Bachelor of Fine Arts. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but we take the entire liberal arts load that everybody else graduates with when they get their bachelor's. But then on top of that, we take all of our fine arts classes, which are studio classes, history of art, things like that. And usually there were days, about 2 or 3 days a week, that I went to school from 8 a.m. until about 10 p.m. So that I could get in all of the liberal arts courses too, along with my studio classes, which were all about 3 hours long. So I went to college for that. I went back to New York, where I'm from, and I did some commission work for films, did some private classes with people, building my network. And then I ended up years later moving to Florida with my husband and my one child. And I was quite pregnant with my second. And when they were about 3 or 4, I realized through some connections, I had been on the board of directors of Ridge Art and some things like that, that in the public school system, there were no between, I think it was kindergarten and fifth or sixth grade, you got 1 year of visual arts because that was the first thing that they cut. And I just found that appalling. So I went to one of the schools here in Winter Haven and asked them if they would like me to come and voluntarily teach art. And they said yes. And so, and this is how I ended up teaching. So I taught fourth grade once a week, and it was very rewarding. And there was this one thing that we did with the kids, I did with the kids, where they had to bring in their favorite object, a picture of it, turn it upside down, and then draw it without looking at it right side up. They were Martians. They knew what a pencil was. They knew what paper was, and they had to draw this thing that they had no idea what it was here on Earth. There was this one little boy, and he was an outcast. He always had on what was supposed to be a white t-shirt, but it was quite gray. His hair was not clean. He was not clean. And we did that drawing. And at the end, it took 2 classes. And at the end, they were allowed to turn it around and compare it to the picture that they had brought in. And this is learning how to draw from the right side of the brain, which is your creative side. And that little boy jumped up and he screamed, "I did it. I drew it." And then he yelled, "I can do something." And that was the moment where I knew I could make a difference in kids' lives through art, that it wasn't just about art. It was about making a difference in a child's life. So I wanted my children in a private school. Here I had gone to private schools. So I went over to school here in Winter Haven and said if they ever needed an art teacher, that I was their art teacher. They fired their art teacher and hired me, which was a little, I didn't expect that, but I needed the break on the kids' tuition. So it was killing two birds with one stone. And that's how I got into teaching.
So, jumping into this art teacher role where previously they didn't have much going on, again, you said because of the fundings getting cut. What did you do when you got into this role? Did you have to start from scratch? Was there curriculum to follow? Did you build it? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, when I got to this private school, I couldn't believe it. There was about a half a page per class, and it was things like string painting and fingerprint drawing, and that was about it. I think what had been done prior to this was because I kind of ticked off a lot of the teachers because they were like, could you have them all do Mother's Day cards and can they do Christmas cards? And it's like, no, you can do that in your classroom. I got this wonderful opportunity of developing a curriculum starting in K3 and going all the way up at that point to eighth grade. And then when the school got a high school, I got to develop that entire curriculum too. I based it on what I had learned in college. One of the things that, not the first headmaster that I had, but the second headmaster said he never would hire teachers that had gone through school to become art teachers because they limited what the children could do. I had them doing gesture drawings and still lifes and things in fourth grade, third grade, and that was really neat. But developing the whole curriculum was very exciting, very exciting. 3-year-olds, you can't keep their attention for more than 12 minutes. By the time they're in K4, it's maybe 20 minutes, you know. So I had to find things to do that they could do in a short period of time, keep their attention, and then they could develop on that as time went on. And that works the whole way through.
So if a school was to start a class and work on curriculum, can you
Mhm.
give me some top things to remember when developing curriculum, the cohesive part, the fundamentals, the state standards? What are big items to keep in mind when developing curriculum?
Well, I like that you brought up the state standards. I based all of my curriculum on the Kennedy Center standards for a superior art program. I did not go by Sunshine State standards. I went by the best standards in the United States. That really helped because it brought the entire art program to a much higher level than you would usually have in a lot of the curriculums around the state. Well, one of the things is to build on each year the curriculum from the year before. So let's say with K3, I was teaching them how to draw circles and triangles and almond shapes and things like that. But what I would do is I would bring that into a finished product. They draw a circle and then they would draw two triangles on the top, and then they would do two U shapes with another U shape, and they would end up with a kitty cat. And then you go to K4, and they're drawing two lines that are wider at the bottom, closer together at the top, and they're putting W's in the middle. And then they're drawing lines, and they're doing M's and W's on those lines, and they come out with a palm tree. And so each year you would put a little more into it. And with each project, like at the beginning of the year, it's easier, and as the project goes on, then it becomes something that's a little more advanced, and then you grow on that the next year. By the time they're in fifth grade, they're doing self-portraits, portraits of people across the table, using all of those basic things that they learned about form and shapes. And so each year you would develop that. By the time they're in middle school, they're working with different things rather than just pencil or pen or Sharpie. They're working with ebony pencils, and they're learning how to use those, and gestural drawing, and how to pull energy into the pieces that they're doing. Whereas in the beginning, they're not doing that as much. And they're learning perspective and different drawing techniques and all of that. By the time they were in sixth grade, they had already done their first acrylic painting. By the time they were in eighth grade, they had done an acrylic painting using a higher quality of acrylic paint. But then, because there's such an enormous amount of people that came into the school in ninth grade, then all of those things need to be repeated for the people that have not had the kind of technical background that the students coming all the way through had gotten. So you have to get them up to par also. So you start all over again. That curriculum was fun. Art 1, Art 2, 2D art, 3D art, advanced art, advanced art one, advanced art two, so you took them through the whole program that way. By the time they graduated, they were doing oil paintings, which you can't do in the public schools because of the turpentine and things like that. So they got to do a lot of things like that, and that's just in class. That's in class stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff.
So it sounds like you focused a lot on building a solid foundation and then you would spiral back and you'd add to it. Would you do that with your curriculum as the year progressed? Go back, make notes, and develop your curriculum as you grew in your art role?
Because you're really focusing on their technical skills in the art room. It's almost like doing a science lab. If you're going to make a certain thing in a science lab, you don't think, oh, well, maybe I'll put a little this in there and see if that makes it better. It's very technical, and people don't realize that. They think it's all like, whoa, creative. And so they have to have the technical skills. The creativity and the drive to do it is something that you cannot give to a student. That's something that's just given to them. But the technical skills, I can teach anybody to draw. I can teach anybody to paint. I can do all that because it's all technical.
Tell me your thoughts on the importance of celebrating their work, authentic learning projects, shows, museum visits, connecting what they're learning to application in real life.
The first thing I'd like to talk about is the aspect of having an open forum for them to be creative. Starting in when they're 3, I had something called the Thumper Rule. And for anybody that's seen Bambi, Thumper was very critical of Bambi. Thumper's mother said, "Now, Thumper, what's the rule?" And he said, "If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all." And we had that Thumper rule all the way through to seniors in high school. And they would laugh about it, but they knew that it was a place where we could create. And I explained to them, there's some kids that come here that have never drawn. And for you to make fun of somebody that's never had the opportunity to draw is really mean. It was an open field for everybody. And if somebody drew beautifully, that's wonderful. And yay, that's so nice. And for kids that maybe didn't draw too well, maybe the colors that they used were nice. So the kids were only allowed to compliment one another's work. And that went all the way through. I really didn't have discipline problems because I respected the kids and I treated them like human beings. I did not tower over them like I was some kind of authoritarian. They knew that there were certain things that were expected, and they did them. I told them they were all artists. When they're in the art room, they are artists. And that really helped. That really, really helped. Bullies, the ones that everybody watched that always caused trouble, I would pull them in my office and I would say, I need your help. I just can't handle these kids. You're a born leader. They all look up to you. They all follow you. Could you please help me? And they go, oh, yeah, yeah. And so we go back out. And as soon as somebody'd act up, the bully would go, hey, you be quiet. Miss D's trying to talk. I never had a problem with the bullies. It worked. And then I would praise them for the good work that they were doing and how much they were helping me. I held the kids accountable for what they did. I have on red lipstick, and there's a reason for that. There is a study that was done that showed that if you wear red lipstick, and guys, that's up to you, that kids listen. They look at your mouth when you wear red lipstick, and so you have a better control of the classroom. And I needed that. I mean, I had kids working with X-Acto knives and stuff, and upon occasion something would happen. And if it was something that was really I couldn't handle, I think about 5 times I sent kids to the principal in 25 years. And it was because they had really been incorrigible. Other than that, I took care of it in class. There, to make art valid for everybody, because a lot of kids were in there, they could have cared less. They thought they thought they were going to get an easy elective. And I'd say to them, look, you guys are going to make a lot of money when you grow up. And either you're going to have a wife that wants to invest in art, or you're going to want to invest in art. And if you don't know what good art is, you're going to end up with a bunch of junk for a lot of money. So it's worth listening. And that really helped. I mean, that got to them, you know. The other thing that we did was we did go to museums because it was very important. I had one group of eighth graders, all boys. It was a very interesting class. And I was teaching them about gesture drawing, which is the inner energy. You know, you draw the inner energy first, and then after that, you draw the outline of the outside. It makes a much more interesting drawing. And I was showing them Giacometti, who was a sculptor, but he did these beautiful, beautiful gestural drawings. And they're all like, you know. And we went to the Sara Lee collection at the Polk Museum of Art, which, by the way, was amazing that they had this wonderful collection at the Polk Museum of Art. It had Rodin's and it had Giacometti's. And the boys went into the room and they all ran out high-eyed. I mean, they were just like, Mrs. D, there's a Giacometti in there. And all of a sudden it was real. It was real. It wasn't just pictures in a book. And those guys ended up doing some incredible artwork. And it was directly related that because we went to a museum and they knew it was real, you know. There's some great museums in the area. The Appleton in Ocala, Orlando Museum of Art, St. Petersburg has, and this was really cool too. St. Petersburg, their Museum of Art is great. Their Dolly Museum is wonderful, but they also have a Dale Chihuly Museum. He is a glass artist that is world renowned. I mean, he's just amazing, and the kids, it like opened up their eyes to a completely different art form. And I think that's very important for them too. And the way that it impressed on them was amazing because their drawings, their paintings, all of a sudden they were using these colors and these forms that were in these glass sculptures by Dale Chihuly. It's just really neat to see. The other thing I used to do, and they loved this, is I would take them down to Lake Placid, where there are murals all over the town, incredible murals. And the town itself, Lake Placid, will give you this like a treasure hunt, and I would split them up into groups, and they would go around and find all the things in the murals, which was really cool too. So they were exposed to a bunch of different kinds of artwork and different museums and uh, I took a group of students, I think there were about 15 of them, to Europe one summer, to England, Ireland, and Wales. And they spent a week going to college taking life drawing lessons, which was really neat. I never, um, I never censored artwork. Uh, like, oh, if they don't have clothes on, it's not okay, because artwork has nudes. I mean, David, by Michelangelo is a nude. I mean, so the kids, when they were in first and second grade, would look through my history of art books and say, "Oh, what's this?" And it'd be like an Egyptian something, So they had exposure. I have a very vast art book collection, so they went through all those too. They looked at those, so that was also one of the things that we did.
So you mentioned some of the things that really brought success into your room, the foundation, feeling like it's a safe place,
Mhm,
you as the teacher
mhm,
facilitating a safe space, and
uh,
then identifying and developing some of their personality traits and
mhm,
sharpening them into productive members of society, which I think is incredibly important in the
mhm,
education field, is to
mhm.
do what you did and say, I do identify your leadership skills, however I need your help working this way with me. And then the authentic learning, connecting what they're learning in the classroom to the real life events,
Right.
that does open their eyes and sort of make it have a little bit of purpose. Tell me a
Mm.
little bit about some of the art shows and the awards part. Did you notice that was a helpful part of your class structure?
We went into the 12th Congressional District Creative Youth Art Competition at Polk Museum of Art. We were always successful. We always placed in that, and we were doing incredible work. And whatever piece won hung in the halls of the walkways in the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and it hung in the school board for a year. And because we were a private school, I don't think that that really would mesh too well. So we did not get that. Although we did place honorable mention, second, third, all the time. We also went into Bartow Blooming Arts, and we always placed first, second, third, honorable mention. We always got just about everything there. Ridge Art always had a student show. We always placed in that. In fact, I had at Ridge Art, I had a couple of the students that were 18 that went into regular shows. You had to be an adult, you had to be 18 to be able to show in the adult shows. And I had probably three or four students that showed in their regular shows with adults my age, and they did quite well. The other thing that we did was we went into the Disney Masters Sidewalk Chalk Competition, and the Sarasota Sidewalk Chalk Competition, and we always got firsts and seconds and thirds in that. And that would be a weekend long trip. We would go up. I usually had two teams of four each, and they would practice before we went, and they were each given an 8 foot by 8 foot square, and I would give them a picture of the masters, whoever, Monet, Manet, usually impressionists because those seem to look the best, and they would spend the weekend enlarging these paintings and doing them in chalk, which actually we used pastels. I really went all out for that, and we always won there. And Sarasota, the same thing, Sarasota Sidewalk Chalk Competition, and we would do that, and they were weekend long competitions. This was really neat. The advanced students, at the end of the year, we had an advanced student art show, and they would be given a large board, probably 12 feet long, both sides, and a wall. And they would hang their entire body of work for the year that they had done. And then we would have a reception at the school. And their work was for sale. And a lot of parents bought their work, not their children's work, but they bought artwork. This stuff was incredible. It really was. I was very proud of the kids. And I think the other thing to mention is that I one year I had 8 students out of a class of 42 kids that went to art school. And I'm not talking about like little art schools. I'm talking about good 4-year programs. Boston University, Pratt, RISD, which is Rhode Island School of Art and Design, schools in New York City. I mean, really, really good schools that a lot of people that are in, enormous art, based kind of schools don't get into. We were in competition with Harrison for the School of the Arts. We won above them quite a bit, and we were as talented as they were. But every year I had at least 2 students that went to art school. And there are people in this community that are selling their artwork to the people that own Publix and all the, top people in the area, doing commissions, making a living off of their artwork. Another student that's in Spain and is a works in film, and that's directly through my program. So there's a lot of people that are very successful too as adults.
The amount of people that know Pam through your education and your art as a teacher is incredible. You've touched so many lives in such a powerful way and helped them grow and develop. So it's just a big smile. Oh, she was my art teacher. And then they've got a story to say that's always good about their connection with you. I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of teaching.
Mhm.
Um, so it's kind of connected to this, but what would you say your teaching philosophy is, if you could sort of encapsulate that?
I think that for me, art is a wonderful thing. And I love the fact that so many people went into art, have continued with their art, are buying art, are aware of what good art is, are still doing art, all that kind of stuff. I think that's wonderful. I think that my teaching philosophy has more to do with developing the entire human being. The reason why I'm in touch with a lot of the students that I still am has to do with the fact that I felt that I was given an avenue to nurture and help develop individuals as a whole human being, mentally, physically, and spiritually. That it wasn't just about the art, but it was about connecting with people, seeing them, letting them know I see them, letting them know that they matter, that they count. I had an office there, and there were so many times I'd look at a kid, and I'm sensitive, and my whole life people would say, "Oh, you're too sensitive." Well, I am so glad I'm sensitive. It would be seventh period, and I'd look at a kid and I'd say, "Are you okay?" And they'd say, "Yeah." And I'd say, "You're lying." And and I'd pull them in my office and say, "What's going on?" And it would be like their parents were getting divorced, their boyfriend broke up with them, their girlfriend broke up with them, they were doing poorly in some course. Their friends had been mean to them. It doesn't matter what it was, but I would listen and I could hear them, and I could let them know that it's going to be okay, and that to me, I was always so shocked that they could go through 7 periods and not one teacher noticed. Not one person noticed. Sitting at lunch, nobody noticed. So that thing that I used to get teased for being too sensitive has ended up being an asset in my life, because I can be there for these kids, and I still can. They still call me crying, you know, and I'll be able to be there for them through a divorce, through a parent dying, because it's not about just being a teacher and getting them through to the next class. What it is it's about developing relationships in life and letting people know you're there for them. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for the fact that somehow I was given this capability of seeing these kids and knowing that they're more than just a grade, just a someone that's going to go through. So I guess my philosophy about teaching is it's not really about teaching, it's about being there for human beings.
So your kryptonite became your superpower, and that's quite amazing. Also think because art is partially to do with noticing all the details, that came in really handy with noticing those little micro expressions, those human details of the sadness. And I just love that you said I was able to see them for who they are. That is one of the biggest human desires, is to be seen. So I appreciate that about you for sure. What were some of your biggest challenges in the private sector world of education?
I think one of the biggest challenges was, and it probably is the same in public school, administration and parents. The kids were fine. At some point in my teaching career, something changed where all of a sudden it became this like blame game where the kids would go home, they hadn't done what they were supposed to do. The parent would call, and years ago I had a job answering complaint mail for a cruise company, and I'm so grateful for that today, because what happened was they said to us, listen to them, let them talk, say, I hear what you're saying. And so I brought that into my teaching. So when a parent would call me and they would be all ticked off because Johnny or Susie came home and they said you were unfair with them, and they didn't know about the assignment and you never let them know, and I can't believe you, blah 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 blah, the whole story. And anybody that's taught has had parents like that. I would listen and say, I hear what you're saying, da da da. And then I would explain. I gave them a paper the first day of class with all of the dates. It's been on the board since the first day of class with all of the dates. I reminded them for 2 days prior about the date, and then the parent would say, oh, okay, well, thank you. And I'd say, you're welcome. That's about all you can do. Administration changes in a private school. You get a new headmaster. They have a whole new way of doing things. And that is always interesting. I remember one we had wanted us to do writing across the curriculum. I had studio art. It's like, all right. And how do I do that? Well, you're going to have to figure it out. So I had the kids, they had to write up critiques. We would do critiques on each project and they would have to write it. And then I would have to like do it for grammar and stuff, which I found so sad because, the right side of the brain is the creative side. Those are the kids that are good in art, they're good in history, they're good in English. They are not good in math. They're not good with details like writing perfect sentences and stuff like that. So things like that I found quite challenging. I think there was another one we did that was kind of interesting where we had to do projects with every department. And I came up with a great project, which was the Titanic. And we had a room. And so the art students, they painted the Titanic and they painted underneath the water with the Titanic broken. And then the math class had to come in and they had to do their calculations on how to, what it would have taken, and all that stuff. And science, they did it. And English wrote, each person that died wrote a letter as they were dying. I mean, it was really neat. Everybody did something, and I found that quite interesting. That was kind of fun and different. The board could be quite challenging. The board was people that, some really did believe in the school and wanted the school, had the school's best interest in mind. Other board members, like with any board, liked being on there because they could say they were on the board of trustees. So that was always quite challenging because they would come in with their own agendas. I recall one board came in and thought that we should be on time clocks and use a little time clock in the morning. And in private school, one of the things is you do not work from 7:30 or 7 until 3:30. The times are very different. You tend to work long hours. We did challenge that and say, well, if we're going to be doing that, then we'd like to be paid hourly. And the hourly salary for an artist would be I said like $25 or something. So, you would end up paying me probably 200,000 a year for the hours that I put in. So they dropped that. But, people that really don't understand education, especially in the private sector, it's very different in terms of your connection with the kids. In the private sector, you can hug a kid. I know that in the public schools that they, if a kid's got a problem, you send them to the counselor kind of thing. And it's nice in the private sector to be able to have the capability of being a little more involved with the kids. Yeah, so there are some differences. Different headmasters, that's really interesting. They all have different ways of doing it. Some are micromanagers, some know you know what you're doing and let you do it.
So I'm sure you had to exercise quite a bit of flexibility as the changing of the guards took place.
Yeah.
Draw on your past experiences to reframe it and keep on trucking and continue to do the great job that you required of yourself.
I also did other things. I mean, I was the senior class sponsor. We took them on a senior class trip every year. I put together the seventh grade class trip, which was at a leadership FAA, I think it's called, out on Hatchnahaw Road. That was always fun, teaching them about leadership. The senior sponsor was wonderful. I really enjoyed that too. I also had clubs. We had the art club, National Art Association for kids. We did those. And then I also had a sewing club, which is kind of art related. I kind of did a lot of clubs because a lot of the teachers didn't want to do them because they didn't get paid for them. So I did about 6 clubs. Operation Smile, which was amazing. We took kids to all over the world on missions with kids getting cleft lips and cleft palates fixed. A lot of stuff like that.
Do you think being involved in things outside of your classroom responsibilities made a difference?
Yes, because the kids knew. I mean, they would come to me and say, "We really want to have this club and nobody will do it." I'd say, "Okay." So every day at lunch, that's when the clubs met. There were 5 days a week. The clubs met once a week at lunch, and we all had lunch together and talked about what they were going to do.
I had some boys a couple years ago ask me to be their fishing club sponsor, and I fished 2 times in my whole life. But it's about feeling connected and supported more than just, oh, I'm sure this expert's going to be a club leader. So that makes a lot more sense now that you framed it that way. It's funny.
Absolutely. It's about being there for them. And
Yeah.
they come to you and ask you because they know that you'll be there for them. And that's really what it's all about, isn't it? Making a child feel safe
Mhm.
and acknowledged and seen and know that you've got their back.
Is there anything looking back that you would have done differently from this spot in life?
No, because I believe everything happens exactly how it's supposed to. And with that said, everything that I did the way that I did it, whether I failed at something, whether I was successful at something, is all how it was supposed to happen. You know, there's things that sometimes you say or do with a kid out of anger or just not being thoughtful that will haunt you. Those kind of things will haunt me. The fact that I think it's really important to make sure that I take care of those situations and don't let them haunt me, and make an amends if it needs to be done. I'm grateful for that today. So yeah.
We all have bad days. I've done similar things. And I've had to apologize to a kid. Hey, I'm sorry I snapped at you. Sometimes the look in their eyes when you apologize, they're not used to it.
Oh
And
yeah.
that teaching moment is also helpful.
Yes. Yes. That you can be sorry. That
Yeah.
I think that that's good for them too. Yeah.
We can be wrong, we can be
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite resources, any go tos that you've used in the past or continue to use regarding education?
I think one of the books that helped me a lot was called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain, and it had some wonderful things in there, like the upside down drawing, things like that, that really helped me to uh, helped me to develop a curriculum, and I'm very grateful for that book. But other than that, I used art books. I used art books, and a lot of it's common sense. I mean, you know, it's about if you have a group of students doing something and the group as a whole is having difficulties with it, then you just back down a little bit and get it to a level that they can understand so that you can excel them back to that level where they need to be. It's really about having the pulse of the class, and I think that's important. I remember this one class. It was a ninth grade class, so there were kids that had never been trained, and two of these kids, it was both they were both girls, but one had done a picture of like it was a picture of like a little graveyard with a fence around it, and instead of having it with perspective where it's larger in the front and smaller in the back, she had laid the whole fence down around it. And she knew it was wrong. And she had and the other girl had done something similar, but both of them had the same look on their face. They were almost ashamed because they didn't know how to do it. And I did not do any negative stuff in my art classes. It was all positive reinforcement. And and with each girl, I worked with them. And both of those girls ended up going through the entire art program and ended up being two of my best art students. And it had I said, "What'd you do with that fence? Oh my God," she would have never taken art again. That's I think that that's really important, the positive reinforcement. I love that color. I love those strokes that you used. Did Why don't you try this? See if this works better. You know, things like that. You know, just trying to do it in a way that encourages rather than demeaning,
Yeah,
discouraging.
identify that strength and then build it up. And I've heard that as a thread throughout your whole story. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being on EduCurious. I loved hearing more about it. already know about you, but I learned a lot about your art practice as a teacher in the classroom. So I really appreciate it. It was so
Thank you so
fun.
much for having me. This was
Thank
wonderful.
you. Tune in next time and we'll have another educational leader on the show to give us some information about who knows what. It could be about substitute teaching, it could be about driving a school bus, it could be about being a superintendent or a principal. Let me know what you want to hear about, and I'll find the person. We can all learn from each other. See you next time.